Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Sirhan on X, live from a cold and chilly night in Cincinnati, Ohio. And as I said, I was going to have a warm and fuzzy live stream tonight. As you see behind me, I have the fireplace going again. Those in the Cincinnati area, I hope you guys are staying warm in this because it's supposed to dip out of nowhere to like in the teens tonight. I know there's some people that's watching me who are the overnight workers at the place I work at. I know you guys are watching. If you guys are going to drive out in this weather because they're calling for a wintry mix, please be safe. I mean, I sort of locked out because when I came home, the wind started picking up. Actually, I can hear the winds right now as I'm talking, and because of that, I'm glad I made it home. Weirdly, it's supposed to go up to the 50s after the weekend, but for now, if you guys are in the weather in the Cincinnati area, just try and stay warm and nice and fuzzy because it's supposed to get really, really chilly tonight. Look, I have my cold weather solution here going on, and it's going to be going all night. I'll probably sleep right there next to it after my show. I mean, like when I put this here together in the turn of the century, it's like the greatest thing I ever did. I mean, it saved me boatloads of dollars when it comes to my heating bill. And actually, a couple times when we had like power outages when in the winter when we had electricity dark and everything, this thing kept me afloat because I was able to get some light in the dark. I was able to stay warm while I had no furnace kick. Actually, I was able to cook some hot dogs, chicken patties, and some marshmallows and a bunch of other stuff on here for a meal because there was a week back in 2003 where we had no electricity for like 3 days because we were iced in. And I'll tell you this, I was able to actually make some meals off of this and actually fill myself up for this few days. Felt like an old, cool story back in the day. I always brag about this winter time. If you guys manage to get, if you guys ever have an interest in getting a fireplace or a wood burner stove like this, it's highly recommended by me. I strongly recommend it because it's the biggest lifesaver in more ways than one. Actually, if you get it warm enough, you can actually run around in your own house with just a pair of basketball shorts, like what I like to do sometimes, which I'll probably be doing that after the show. Good thing is, my furnace doesn't kick. So again, the air is supposed to be real cold. Hope everybody's out there staying warm. Hope everyone out there is doing well on the 4th of December 2024. Getting closer, of course, to the Christmas holidays. Uh, So just thought I'd put a little introduction in there to what I have going on because apparently everyone asked me about this. As I said, if you can find yourself one, go ahead and get one. I mean, highly recommended by me. Now, as I said, I'll just go ahead and jump right into this to the next segment of week 14. I'm just going to stick to the playoff implications because, that's where we're headed toward right now. Pretty darn good one coming up Thursday night in Detroit between the Lions and the Packers. Of course, Detroit has a list of key guys already out, notably DG Reader, the ex-Bengal here in Cincinnati, out with a shoulder injury. Uh, Green Bay trying to keep a pace with Detroit for the NFC North title with Minnesota. Actually, it's becoming an interesting three-team race here with Detroit being 10-1, Minnesota 11-1, Minnesota 10-2, and Green Bay 9-3. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, all three teams are probably going to surpass like 11, 12 wins at this rate and make the playoffs. I think this Thursday night, I think Detroit's going to find another way to hold serve at home, but I think Green Bay's going to give up all they can handle because uh, basically Detroit went into Green Bay a few weeks ago and just basically dog walked them. But I think it'll be a different story this time. Same result, Detroit wins, but I think Green Bay's going to put up a much, much better fight. I think it's going to be a pretty darn good game tomorrow night. I'll be here on home watching it because I won't be able to because I'll be coming home from my line of work and I'll be able to tune into the game like a bunch of you guys in the NFL field. Um, so that's the Thursday night game. A couple of the key ones on Sunday we'll pay attention to. Of course, the rematch Cleveland at Pittsburgh. Of course, everybody knows what happened in that cool snow game in Cleveland where the Browns won. Simply because I think Pittsburgh came off an emotional high after beating their division rival Baltimore, came down a little bit. But I think after beating Cincinnati and seeing how they were viewed on the HBO's Hard Knocks, I think Pittsburgh's going to get their payback and they're going to handle Cleveland at home this time. And I think they do it convincingly. Yeah, I got a chance to, before I proceed, is what got a chance to see some of this uh, full division Hard Knocks. I mean, never seen this for a whole division. I mean, right now, the gold standard in the division is Mike Tomlin. Just watch how he handles himself, and look at how he showed his leadership toward George Pickens after Pickens thought he that the defender should have been flagged for pass interference, and he wasn't happy with it. Mike Tomlin, as a true leader of men, pulled him aside, calmed him down, saying, "Relax, we're gonna get this. We need you on the field. Stay focused." Of course, the next offensive series, George Pickens gets the touchdown, and basically Pittsburgh just rolls over Cincinnati. And of course, Cincinnati, being Cincinnati, basically just wants to carry themselves like a bunch of douches because they feel the need to talk about Batmobiles. No wonder why they're 4-8 because they don't care about the game. They care about Batmobiles. They'd rather have Batmobiles over football wins. That's the issue with Cincinnati. Cleveland, you know, you gotta like James Winston's mentality a little bit. I mean, lose, just having fun. The team's not going anywhere, but he's just having fun. I mean, I tip my hat off to him for a team that's basically in the cellar right now. And of course, Baltimore, John Harbaugh is just a case of John Harbaugh. Of course, speaking of Baltimore, earlier today it was revealed that they suspended the recently acquired Deontay Johnson the game because he refused to go in. And speaking of Mike Tomlin pretty much said this guy was uncoachable. If you're not going to cut it under Mike Tomlin and you're not going to listen to Mike Tomlin how he coaches, especially after watching the video on Hard Knocks, you're not going to cut it anywhere. Because Mike Tomlin is a leader of men, and he speaks the truth to your face, and he knows how to, push buttons when necessary. I mean, look at how he basically taught everybody to simply grow up in the Hard Knock show. That's why Mike Tomlin is one of the premier coaches in the NFL. But to Deontay Johnson, I think his 5 minutes of fame are over. I mean, if he's not going to get it here in Baltimore or anything, he's likely not going to find an NFL roster other than just being a depth piece at this point. I mean, Raven fans are already, calling for his head, understandably so. But then again, Steelers fans try to tell them this was who Deontay Johnson is, and the Ravens fans thought Deontay Johnson was going to be a fit in the offensive schemes. They gave him a chance. He didn't want it. I mean, that's who Deontay Johnson is. So, but just thought I'd give my 2 cents on the all division Hard Knocks. I've been a fan of Hard Knocks for the longest time. I've never seen it with a division, but I think we got a revealance of who the Steelers are, who the Bengals are, who the Steelers fans are, and who the Bengals fans are, because it's night and day. There's a reason why one team historically has won 6 Super Bowls. There's a reason why the other team is basically living in the basement in poverty. We know why that is. That basically that Hard Knocks video is all I need to know and all you need to see. So I'm going to touch on that a little bit. Go over the games to touch on. Actually, a real light schedule here. Um, the Sunday night games has playoff implications. Chargers and the Chiefs. I think Kansas takes a step closer to clinching the AFC West because they have Buffalo on their heels for the 1 seed. I think Kansas finds a way to get the job done at home. Uh, hopefully, they can probably get something going here. They just find ways to win. I mean, what can you say? They said it best. I mean, I think it was Patrick Mahomes that said this. We're not going to beat ourselves. You're going to have to legitimately beat us. I mean, the only team that's done it this year was Buffalo in that Week 12 game a couple weeks ago, but that's about it. I mean, nobody's gift wrapping him anything. The NFL is not fixing anything. And I'll tell you this, they're just finding ways to win. That's why they're going to probably three-peat at this point. It's going to be a tough road because, they're getting everybody's best, and Kansas City knows this. But there's a reason why they're 11-1. They've had the success they've had for the last 6 years because they know what to do at the right time, and they do what it takes to win. They don't make mistakes or self-destruct like some of these other teams do, Cincinnati. And another one I'd like to talk about a little bit is for the NFC West title because I'm not into these playoff odds and playoff percentages because it can mean a lot of things. But we're talking about Seattle and Arizona. The winner is going to probably give a 70+% chance to make the playoffs. The loser only around 11 to 12%. I forgot what the percentages were for each team, but that's a ballpark. Rematch of what took place in Seattle 2 weeks ago, but they're going to Arizona this time. I know Arizona laid an egg in Minnesota last week, but I think this Sunday, I think they turned the tables, and I think they're going to be the one to win this game at home. I think they find a way to just muck it up and get the W on their home field. Give me Arizona at home. Geno Smith is too streaky of a quarterback for me to really trust in big game situations. I mean, he didn't necessarily play that great against Arizona the previous time, but they lucked out because the defense just mauled Kyle Murray. But I think this time it's going to be a different tone in Arizona. Give me Arizona at home. I think it's going to be a down to the wire game in a 23-20 range, but I think this time Arizona takes it. Another one here we're talking about. One here. Atlanta and Minnesota. Give me Minnesota at home. I mean, Brian Flores has that defense playing pretty well. Sam Darnold, in the comeback player of the year running. Of course, they want to give it to the guy in Cincinnati because they have this love affair for that guy in Cincinnati. But give me Minnesota at home. Atlanta's basically a 500 team. The only thing they have going for them is they swept Tampa Bay, which may factor in the head-to-head tiebreaker for the NFC South title. But nothing more to say at this point. I mean, Atlanta is basically you get what you get out of Atlanta. I mean, 1 week they look like they're going to beat the world. Then the next week, the world is out to beat them. I mean, case in point, when they got dog walked by the Seahawks and the Broncos not too long ago. So those are the games we'll touch on. Nothing much there because the rest of it just has no playoff implications. I'm steering away from it with this time of year. But of course, the big news that broke not too long ago was, of course, the NFL upholding the suspension of Azeez Al-Shaair. For those who don't know, of course, he was the one that whopped Trevor Lawrence, knocked him upside the head, gave him concussion. Pretty much the Jaguars put him out for the year. People saying it's because of the hit. People saying because of the rough year. But either way, Jacksonville's not going anywhere. What are you going to gain out of it? That hit, basically, I think the Jaguars coaching staff and, front office saw the lines a little bit. But in terms of the suspension, I said repeatedly not too long ago, I thought this 3-game suspension was softer than a slap on the wrist. And I mean softer than a slap on the wrist. Don't say it was a slap on the wrist because it was softer than that. And we're talking about a guy who should be suspended at least 5-6 games at the minimum. I mean, he knew what he was doing all along. I don't want to hear about fake sliding. I don't want to hear about, manipulation. Trevor Lawrence did what he was supposed to do. Al-Shaair knew it, did it deliberately, did it with malicious intent, did it with a intent to harm. And the fact that he only got 3 games, I think he was gift wrapped because it's the holidays more than likely. Of course, they have a bye week coming up. They're going to miss 3 games against Miami, Kansas, and Baltimore. Key matchups because it's probably for AFC seeding. But as I said, softer than a slap on the wrist punishment. 3 games was too soft for him, especially when you consider the fact this guy's a multiple repeat offender. I mean, the footage is out there on the X platforms if you guys want to watch it. I mean, others have posted it. I'm not going to discuss it more. You guys are more welcome to scroll it and find it. it was softer than a slap on the wrist. I said the guy should have been around 5, 6 games minimum. I mean, in the near the same ballpark as what Miles Garrett did to Mason Crosby several years back. I mean, you guys know the story there. I don't know what the hell Mason Crosby said. Miles Garrett took the helmet and whacked him upside the head, and he got suspended 6 games, which I thought that was soft also. But Al Azeez Al-Shaair basically got off light and soft and easy. I mean, it should have been at least a 5 or 6 game suspension. This was softer than a slap on the wrist. I don't want to hear about this being soft punishment or basic or whatever. The guy basically didn't get fined, but apparently he's going to lose his game checks. I believe a sum of the essence of about $250,000 for these 3 games coming up. And of course, Texas GM Sessiano, can't pronounce remember his first name. I think Nick Sessiano, whatever the hell you want to call it, still backs this guy, still calls the NFL inconsistent. As I said, he might be right about the NFL inconsistency when it comes to punishment, but when it comes to this player and the situation, he doesn't have a leg to stand on. Because Al-Shaair got off light, got off soft. Again, they're sitting Trevor Lawrence for the year. Many reasons for it. Maybe the hit was basically the final straw, understandably so. Of course, caused a near riot on the Jacksonville sideline. But again, soft punishment. We'll probably see. So here, I think it's supposed to be the season finale when they go to Tennessee. Let's see how that goes, because Houston's probably going to still win that division regardless, because the rest of that division is basically just threw in the towel. But damage was probably done, because now, of course, it's going to be who's going to be the one that goes to Houston for the playoffs. Baltimore, LA, Pittsburgh, they managed to fall off the top. A lot of choices to choose from. And of course, another topic, the NFL has been ran rampant all season long, has been kicking. I'm not one to talk about kickers, but I think it's interesting that some of the numbers this year, some of the misses or the quote gimmies end quote are no longer quote gimmies end quote. And of course, now we have all the injuries coming up. Of course, Harrison Buckner of Kansas City's out for a while. The guy they replace him with, he's going to be out for a while. They just signed another kicker from the practice squad. Now the news here in Cincinnati is Evan McPherson's going to be out for a while. They bring Cade York from who spent time with Cleveland and Washington. I remember a time when basically everything was, given for kickers. Maybe with the rules changes, whatever it is, I don't know. I mean, nothing's a given anymore. Of course, all this started back years back when they moved the extra point back about, I think, like 7, 8 yards, because it used to be the extra points at the 2 yard line at 99 and a half times out of 100. The extra point was a guarantee. Now, of course, a lot of things changed. The 2 point conversion, moving the kickback, and of course, now all the injuries to these kickers. I don't know what to make of it. I've never seen a situation where the kickers have been like this. Everybody talks about overall play being down. I'm not one to say kicking play is down, because I never focus on the kickers as much like everybody else does, because I said if you have to rely on kickers, uh, especially red zone field goal kicking, you're not going to have success. But I think you have to have someone reliable just in case you need a game winner, like Harrison Buckner has done throughout the years in Kansas City. Now, of course, he's out. They brought someone who kicked well in a couple games. Now he's out. Apparently, he's on the IR, and they brought somebody else in again. Just weird that we have issues with kickers in the NFL this season, especially when we talk about the dynamic kicking rule when they had implemented the XFL rule, which first I understood the concept, but I didn't think it managed well at the end of the day. Who knows what they do next season? Because the NFL just wants to find like 15 to 20 to 25 different rules they want to mess with. We'll probably have an off season of crazy rule changes of stuff that they don't even care about. Just ways to piss off the consumer. Because of course we know about the hip drop tackle. If you guys don't know, this of course responds to what happened to Mark Andrews against Logan Wilson in a game in Baltimore at the end of the 23 season. Some players were fined or because of the hip drop tackle. I don't know what it is. But as we all know, the NFL likes to play by their own rules, make up their own rules on the go, and they don't care about the consumer whatsoever. Because that's all I have to say about what it is. I mean, it's gotten to a point to where the consumer can see firsthand what the NFL is doing when it comes to their rules changes because it's becoming real petty, soft, and light. But it is what it is at this point. So that's my NFL talk, and I we'll be talking more probably this weekend because we're getting closer to the playoffs. Of course, now I think we have a clue the teams that will probably be going in. Now it's about seeding and matchups. Who gets what seed and who gets the matchup they want? Because now we talk about jockeying for position. It's going to get real interesting, especially in the AFC where I think the 7 teams are basically locked. I mean, Kansas, Buffalo, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, the Chargers, um, the Texans, and the Broncos. Again, not that order, but we'll figure it out when the time comes. Now to one a topic up by alleyway, and I bring this for all the conspiracy theorists out here in all sports, especially here in Cincinnati, who like to cry the word fix. I got one for you. That's probably the closest thing to a fix I've ever read about, and I've ever got a chance to see, and I've ever got a chance to witness. This took place 48 years ago at the Spectrum in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The names might not wow you because neither guy was mounted to be an all-time great. Neither guy was going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But this night basically just ruffled every single major feather imaginable, and the circumstances around it was just absolutely crazy. This was a fight between Alfredo Escalara and Tyrone Everett. Synopsis here: Escalara was a champion, known for 2 fights with the great Alexis Arguello. Goes to the backyard of Tyrone Everett, who was an undefeated prospect at the time. Hometown kid, basically loved in Philadelphia. Lived a bit of a wild and crazy, out of the ring lifestyle. Of course, Escalera did too. I mean, he was no exemption. But his wildness was basically well chronicled. Extra women. For a super featherweight, had a chiseled body that attracted women. I mean, what can you say? But Escalera was a champion going into the guy's backyard. You would think Everett would have the home field advantage. Now, let me remind you, Escalera was a favorite of back then was known as crime mobs because back then it wasn't the big money promoters, it wasn't the big money networks, it was crime mobs who wanted their input on fights like this. Of course, Escalera known for having a connection, especially with a fellow named Honest Bill Daly. I mean, one of the real crime mobs back then. I mean, if you can look it up, his list of crime mobs and affiliations with sports and boxing is through the roof. Um, the fight itself was basically a boxing exhibition by Everett. I mean, for you, the younger ones and the more modern ones of the 80s, 90s, and even today, maybe the closest thing to it was for that time was like what Pernell Whitaker did to Julio Cesar Chavez and Jose Luis Ramirez, something like that. Because Everett was like a Whitaker was a select southpaw who could juke and make you miss, make you pay. Escalera was with the Hispanic descent, very efficient, the tight guard. When he threw, he landed. When he landed, he did damage. Brought the super featherweight belt with him to the backyard of Everett. Basically, Everett just in that night just gave Escalera a boxing lesson. I mean, basically, from what I saw, he won the fight at least in the 15 minutes, at least 11 rounds. I mean, it was that one sided. Now, before I proceed with the decision, let me just remind you guys again, especially in combat sports where there's now 3 judges. Back in those days, it was 2 judges and 1 referee. Referees scored fights back then. I don't know how the hell they did it, but this one had one of them. The decision was announced that Alfredo Escalera, some way, somehow, got perhaps one of the more controversial decisions maybe ever. I mean, he got it in Tyrone Everett's backyard. You know, basically, the scores were just real bizarre. I mean, the referee who scored this fight scored 9 rounds even. The only question I have for any fight followers: how the hell do you score a fight 9 rounds even? I mean, one judge gave it to Everett, only like 2 points. The other one gave it to the other two give it to Escalera. Only the referee scored the fight for Everett, but he did it with a basis of 9 even rounds. And the other rounds he gave to Everett in a fight that basically Everett just gave him a boxing lesson. I was on a boxing show earlier this summer, and we talked about robberies and some of the ones I've seen. Maybe after everything that happened with this, especially with the crime mob affiliation and the connection that might have taken place between Escalera, you know, and everybody else that surrounded this. Maybe I should have had this hired, maybe even over Whitaker over Ramirez, because everything around this was just absolutely dirty. I mean, the decision was so egregious that apparently one of the managers of Tyrone Everett jumped into the ring and ripped the scorecard off the ring announcer's hand just to make sure he saw it correctly. And then all kinds of chaos ensued. I mean, there was protests, there was, um, you know, complaints, there was everything you can name of it. I mean, this one had the goods back in 1976. Again, the two guys weren't going to buy it because they weren't going to be first ballot Hall of Famers. I think this was probably the tipping point for both of them. But the decision was so bad that basically every major network was basically clamor for a rematch, while the idiotic governing bodies didn't want anything to do with it, given the outrage that took place after the fight. Of course, it didn't help. Tyrone Everett's lifestyle was a part of it. Actually, both of them, because neither of them were the saints or the, if you want to call it this, the goody two shoes. But when you, but this whole thing, I got a chance to witness a fight and read all of this. I mean, I'm not one to call anybody that follows me in all sports and all walks of life knows I refuse to call anything rigged or fixed or anything of that ilk because one, that belongs to Cincinnati Bengals fans. Number two, that belongs to Mike Tyson fans. And number three, I think the idea is just absolutely ignorant unless you have a real leg to stand on. But this is probably the first time I've come close from everything I read to simply say this one was because of all the crime mob affiliations that was out there. Now let me remind you. I mean, Don King wasn't involved in this fight, and everybody knows what Don King was. The top rank promotion, not without not without Bob Arum, they were the ones involved in this. And of course, which is weird because anybody that knows the top rank of Bob Arum knows he has connect. He was once worked for the U.S. Attorney's Office. I don't remember what the position was, but how this thing came about, how the fight came about, the circumstances before it, it almost drove me to the point to for the first time I would say I saw a fixed event. I was that close. I pulled back because it's just this was just a case of blatant incompetent judging, which we see in combat sports, not just boxing, but other areas like karate, MMA, among many others. For my UFC followers, you know how you know judges judging in those events go. It was just total incompetence. I still can't fathom how one judge can was basically the referee score the fight 9 even rounds. How you score 9 even rounds in a fight is something I still can't you know fathom. Still, I mean, and of course the other two gave it to Escalera, which I said the fight was just absolutely he was just insanely dominated from start to finish. I mean, I thought basically at least 11 rounds, Tyrone Everett won going away. I mean, give me a break. I can dig deeper into all of this and the conspiracy theories, but I'm not going to rile up Mike Tyson fans or Cincinnati Bengals fans because they're going to come up and say sports are fixed because that's how they are. That's another topic for another day. But just for this night, 48 years ago, the crazy outrage that took place. I mean, a well-respected promoter from Philadelphia named Jay Russell Peltz jumps into that ring, rips the scorecard, and basically stares at the scorecard on live television, saying, "Just double check to make sure that it was correct." I mean, it was read correctly, and Alfredo Escalera retained that title. Of course, it prompted all kinds of wild back and forth, whether because Everett was begging for a rematch, which he deserved. Escalera basically, for the longest time, tried to shoot it down. They finally agreed to it, but during the training camp, Tyrone Everett's lifestyle outside the ring caught up with him, and apparently he was caught having an affair with, I'll just say, significant other. I'm not going to get dig into details on this. It's not my nature to use it. And I guess the wife found out and basically just murdered him. I mean, basically, he caught his wife like weeks before he was supposed to go to Puerto Rico for the rematch with Escalera. His wife caught him with a significant other and just murdered him as a result. I mean, I can go on and on about the wild lifestyles of both these guys because they not just Everett, but also Escalara because he wasn't the Mr. Goody Two Shoes himself. But just for this wild night, for this one night, maybe you could probably argue now after what reading this, I probably should have had this higher on my robbery list. I had this in the bottom of my top 10. Maybe after reading this, I should have had this higher because this was just an embarrassment given everything that took place, everything that built up. You're finding out that crime mobs are basically the equivalent of bookies throwing extra money out there to try and manipulate whatever. And at least perception wise, that's what it seemed to happen with this one. I mean, we talk about a guy like Honest Bill Daly, the master of the crime mob style way back when. This is before, mind you, this is before we had, drug bookies like the one with the Louis Resto Billy Collins fiasco in '83, and of course the power promoters like Don King, Bob Arum, Dan Duva, Al Heyman, just to name a few, who want to manipulate for their own personal benefit. These were crime mobs. And it goes way back, even before Escalara versus Everett. I could dig into details and bust it out there. Just how bad crime mobs were involved in the sport. Probably true in all sports, but I don't think they influenced enough to where you could probably say sports are rigged. I mean, there's monetary compensation involved, I'm sure, but does it make it fixed? Probably not, because these guys are human beings, and you know, you just can't uh, take away the human element. You can't take away the human stupidity of some of them, like I saw with this particular fight, because there's no explanation for why one judge scored 9 even rounds in a boxing match. Forget this, but just forget Escalera Everett. How you have a 10 round or 12 round or a 15-round fight, and you basically two-thirds of your round you score are basically even rounds. Are you even watching the fight? And it's even worse that the referee was right there, who was one of the judges, watching this thing, and just basically said, "We're scoring this 9 even rounds." I mean, maybe that's the biggest outrage out of all of it was how the rounds were scored and how they came up with this. It's even a bigger outrage than the actual fight. As I said, Everett just gave Escalera a boxing lesson. Probably as embarrassing as what maybe Pernell Whitaker did to Jose Luis Ramirez. Sort of like almost like Manny Pacquiao did to Tim Bradley the first time, or what Marvin Hagler did to Vito Antuofermo the first time. That's sort of embarrassment because I mean you're talking about southpaws who have the southpaw stance just made life a living heck for a stationary target like Everett did to Escalera that night. And still, I'm still trying to wrap my head how this fight was scored a draw. Maybe my biggest misunderstanding was when I was invited to that boxing show earlier this summer and talked about the robbery list. I probably should have dug more deep and understood this more because this one was somewhere in my middle of the top, maybe like middle of the top 5 or 6. Probably should have had it higher. Now thinking about it, just because of the circumstances. I mean, this is the closest thing I've ever come to saying I saw a rigged sports event. That close. I mean, this is not wrestling. I mean, wrestling is not even rigged either. I mean, it's scripted, but it's not rigged. The only thing that was rigged in wrestling was the screw job in 1997 between Michaels and Hart. You know what the story of that was. I never once uttered the words rigged out of my mouth because I could say manipulated because that's possible. There's monetary compensation involved, likely under the table, like what happened to a federal investigation into a famous promoter 25 years ago. Doesn't mean it's rigged. I mean, it creates a perception. I mean, I get it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is. Well, I wish I would have been able to talk about this a little more earlier when I had the chance to, because this one was a story within itself. And I remind people who still want to think this ideology about how sports are rigged, sports are fixed. I encourage you to look deeper into this particular fight, everything that built up, because remember, mind you, it wasn't. You can say what you want about how it is today because they don't have the crime mobs or the mafia they had back then. I mean, think about how long it would take for something like this to happen in something like the NFL, the NBA, or collegiate sports, where point shaving scandals have been irrelevant. This fight, there was a long, long trace, but when this fight was signed to now, all kinds of weird connections, all kinds of dark connections, all kinds of dark lifestyles in and out of the ring that involve both these fighters and everybody around them, especially with the crime mobs. It basically came from one huge explosive night in the spectrum of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 48 years ago. Still don't know how the hell you score that fight for Alfredo Escalara. And I don't know what judge would score any fight, not just Escalara-Everett, any fight with 9 even rounds. Reminds me of the whole round controversy of Leonard Hearns, too. You guys know the story there. And on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. About ready to crash and go to sleep here because I have to go back to the workplace tomorrow. So I have this thing going. As you can see, I still have one nice log thrown in there. I'm going to try and stay warm up here. All you guys, especially in the Cincinnati area, hope you guys are staying warm. If you guys are in an area where it's cold, as it is here, because it's supposed to drop to the teens overnight, stay warm, stay inside, do whatever you got to do to stay warm. Because unless you really have to go outside, I wouldn't advise it. I'm staying inside. I mean, I got to have this thing going on. I mean, don't I? Or what can I say? And that wraps it up for the night. There will be no show tomorrow because I will be watching with everybody, the rest of the road out there with Green Bay, Detroit. I will be back Friday night with a whole bunch of goodies, a whole bunch of good stuff. Until then, everybody out there have themselves a wonderful 4th of December 2024. Good night. Take care of yourselves. Sleep well, and God bless.